Greetings! I am Herbert Erperderp, and today I'm going to build this plastic 28mm scale M8/M20 light armoured car made by Rubicon Models. You can see the artwork on the front of the box is pretty nice and depicts an M8 otherwise known as a Greyhound with ring-mounted machine gun. This is the version I intend to build, though the M20 does offer an interesting opportunity to paint more of the interior of the vehicle. The back of the box, as you might expect, has an illustration of an M8 Greyhound with suggested Vallejo basic paint colours, an image of the included waterslide decal sheet, and a bunch of historical information on both variants this kit can be used to build. Let's have a quick look at the two sprues that come inside the box. Sprue A contains the majority of the hull components, such as the rear engine grille, hull sides, and top. As I've come to expect from Rubicon, everything is quite neatly moulded, error-free, and has very few mould lines. Of course, there are also details like lights and stowage boxes, wheels, and the vehicle's frame. As the box says, this is simplified, yet still quite detailed. Wargamers don't really need excessive detail on the underside of their vehicles, even though it can be fun to have. The second sprue contains some detailing parts for the fighting compartment and turret pieces, including the seats and turret basket, due to the turret being open-topped. There are also gun rings and hatches for both variants the kit contains, and of course parts for the M8's 37mm main gun, a hull top for both variants, as well as machine guns. I quite like that a bazooka is included. It's intended for the M20 in place of the 37mm gun. As I'm building the M8, this is going into my bits box. I'm sure I will find a good use for it. Also included is this really nice sheet of waterslide decals. I have used the Rubicon decals before and find them to be quite good. This sheet has plenty of markings including American, French, and British markings and what looks to be some German crosses. I like the name options. I think I will call mine Willy because I'm a mature adult. Heh, Willy. I also really like that there's a little Kilroy decal. How cool is that? Even if I don't use it on this model, that'll be a really nice one to have on hand. And of course, there is the always excellent Rubicon instruction leaflet included, and as usual, it's clear and very easy to understand and follow. Let's get this thing built. I start as the instructions suggest, by assembling the lower hull, starting with the wheels. Just like on Rubicon's M5 half-track I looked at a while ago, the wheels are slightly flattened at the point where they should contact the ground. This is a little touch that I really like. It's good, thoughtful design. The wheels themselves don't have much in the way of mould lines, but they are there and they should be scraped off. I wasn't entirely sure if the numbers and assembly order for the wheels mattered. Probably not, but I laid them out in the way the instructions suggested attaching them anyway. The wheels are then very easily attached to the axles on the frame. They are keyed so they will only fit together the correct way. This ensures the slight flat spot on the wheels will always contact the ground. All 6 wheels go on very quickly and easily. Like the box says, the underside of this model is simple yet still quite detailed. It is definitely aimed at gamers because all you have to do is stick the wheels on rather than assemble some complicated suspension gear that probably won't ever be seen. Now the sides of the hull can be glued to the lower hull part. This goes on quite easily, but definitely test fit the parts first so you're sure of how it should fit, though the parts do more or less guide themselves into place. Looking at it from the rear, the way the hull sides sat seemed a little bit odd to me, though it is correct. Now to add some internal details, these being the radio and some stowage boxes. For the M8, glue the stowage box into the right side of the hull like so, and glue the radio into the left side. If you're building the M20, these two parts are reversed for some reason or other. These will be next to invisible in the M8, though you might still be able to see them through the turret opening. Still, it's a nice touch to have. They will definitely add some interest if you're building the M20. Next, I glue the lower hull onto the frame and wheels assembly. Pretty simple really. I added glue to the tops of the suspension thingies or whatever those are because they have matching recesses moulded into the hull. You can see it all goes together very simply and neatly. You might have to hold the glued parts together for a while to be sure there are no gaps. Once those parts were dry, I glued on the lower front plate. It has a raised guide on the backside to ensure correct positioning, so it just slots into place. The rear of the hull was a similar deal, though I found it to be a slightly tighter fit, so I had to hold the part in place while the glue started to set so it didn't pop off the model. Not really a major issue though. Next, the whole top can be glued into place. This is about as simple as could be. It just sits right on top of the lower hull. You might need to apply a little bit of pressure and hold the parts together to avoid any unwanted gaps. Other than that, there's nothing to it. We are now faced with a choice. What do we fill this area with? There is a choice of stowage boxes or landmine racks. I doubt this is really going to have an effect on how the model will be played in bolt action, so I went with the mine racks because I thought it would present some more interesting painting options, and who doesn't like a good rack? Simply glue it into place like so. Now to add the rest of the external details, starting with these toe or lifting points or whatever they are with the shackles. They can simply be glued into the appropriate recesses on the front and rear of the hull. The only complaint I have about these is that they are solid. They'd look better if you could see through the shackle part, but it's nothing a bit of painting trickery can't fix. These were all numbered differently on the sprue, but they look the same to me, so I don't think the numbers matter. The shackles on the rear attach the same as those on the front. Next comes this part. I believe it's the horn or siren, otherwise it's a lamp. Either way, it's easy to glue into this little recess on the upper front hull. Tweezers would be a good tool to use here, though I managed just fine with my fat fingers. Then, the headlights can be glued into place. I might have used a bit too much glue here, but it could be worse. The parts slot perfectly into their recesses. Easily done, even when using fat fingers. They probably won't please rivet counters, but who cares about them? I think it looks pretty good so far. Next, I added these, which I imagine to be antennas. They were a bit fiddly to remove the mold lines from, but nothing a little bit of patience can't take care of. The towing hook is the next little detail that needs to be added. It is keyed so that you can be sure you're putting it on the correct way, but it looks as though you could just as easily place it upside down. I did find it to be a little bit fiddly, but I got there eventually. Now this Greyhound is ready to tow all the trailers. At this point, we could glue the upper hull into place and call the hull complete. However, I'm going to leave it off for now until the turret is completed. Then I can decide if I want to bother painting the interior. Leaving the top of the hull off will allow for much easier access for painting if indeed anything is visible through the top of the turret. So let's get to building that turret then. The two halves of the turret go together pretty easily. There are pins and holes to guide correct positioning, which is always appreciated when putting together pieces like these that really need to be correctly aligned. Next, I glued on the gun mantlet. It nicely covers that slightly blemished spot where the sprue gate was on the front of the turret. There is of course an internal component of the gun. Because the turret is open-topped, the gun breech will be visible. Adding this is just a simple matter of slotting the breech part into the back of the mantlet part. This would probably have been easier if I'd done it before gluing the two halves of the turret together, but this way wasn't too hard either. It looks like the gun assembly can be left unglued to elevate and depress, but I've chosen to glue mine firmly into place. I don't really have need for elevating or depressing the gun, but it's a nice option for those that want it. Speaking of the gun, it can be glued into place next. The part only needed a little bit of mold line removal. I didn't drill the end out because the barrel is so small. I don't think I would have a drill bit that would fit. Installing the gun is simple, just slot it into place. There is no muzzle brake to worry about aligning properly. All you need to do is make sure the barrel lines up straight with the breech part. Next, this small portion of roof can be installed in the front of the turret top. It has kind of a pin on the underside to help it with positioning. If you're building the early version of the turret, this part requires a hole to be drilled in it. I'm building the late version, so no such hole is required. Then, the turret basket can be glued into place. It just slots right into the bottom of the turret nice and easily. Be sure to position it facing the correct way. The two seats should be towards the rear of the turret. Next, I added the machine gun ring, but in my infinite wisdom, forgot to film that, so here's what it looks like anyway. It just slots onto the top of the turret. Very easy. The early version, of course, doesn't have a turret ring. I guess you will have to consult the instructions if you want to build that version. The late version has this patch, I guess you might call it, on the rear of the turret. This is where the machine gun would be mounted on the early version. Next comes the machine gun itself, which is attached to the sprue in such a way that it's hard to break when clipping the part off, just like with the M5 half-track kit. Very good design. First, glue the ammo box onto the side of the gun. This kit comes with two machine guns, so be sure to select the correct one. Now, make sure your camera is out of focus and attach the machine gun to its ring. Again, like the M5 kit, this machine gun can be placed anywhere on the gun ring, which I think is really cool. Bonus points to whoever came up with that design. I think the turret looks pretty good. The final part of this Greyhound assembly is to test fit the whole top with the turret attached to see what we can see inside the model to determine how much detail I want to put into painting the interior, if at all. It seems with some extra light and a little bit of effort, you can see the radio and stowage drawers. They will get at least a little bit of paint. Nothing too detailed, but more than the basic interior colour. This means that I will need to do some research on the correct interior colours for British Greyhounds. Despite the fact that it would be cool to be able to look inside the Greyhound through the driver's hatch, I've decided to model this hatch closed. I feel like the hatch would be quite easy to break off. Also, it means I can get away with not painting the seats, but it's mostly because I don't want the hatch to break off. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. I dropped the hull top into its position unglued to make interior painting easy, and that's it. One Rubicon M8 Greyhound in 28mm scale completed. I'm really quite pleased with how this model has turned out. It looks very nice and it's pretty well detailed, though I did have a minor gripe about the towing shackle things being solid. At this scale, I don't think it's a huge deal, and the positives far outweigh that issue. This Greyhound should look excellent once it's painted up. I especially like the open-topped turret allowing for some internal paintwork to be visible. That should look interesting and it will provide a bit of a challenge too. I am of course going to have to do my research on the appropriate colours to apply inside the vehicle. I would imagine some kind of creamy white colour. It's always good to learn these things. The kit itself was really easy and quite fun to put together. The instructions are clear and easy to follow, and the build took me about 45 minutes, not including all the time I spent positioning the camera and being distracted and such. Rubicon seem to like packing lots of options into their kits, and this one is no exception. Not only can you build the M20 or the M8, but there's two versions of the M8 you can build. It's good to have options. I really look forward to building many more Rubicon kits in the future. I will get around to painting this kit fairly soon, not in the immediate future, but within the next few months. I plan to field it with my British Army, so I will obviously be painting it to reflect a British vehicle. Just need to do a bit of research on colours before I get onto that, as well as get a few other things finished first. But I will certainly be recording the painting process, and you will see a video about it in the not too distant future. As I said in my previous video about my absence, I do intend to make modelling videos at least once a week, as I was doing before, though there may be some weeks without a video. I do hope you will stick with me. As I spoke about in that video, if you really like the videos I make, you can support me on Patreon. It would be greatly appreciated, though there is no obligation or expectation to do so. I promise not to bang on too much about it, so there's a link in the description and probably somewhere on this YouTube page. My services as a voiceover person are available on Fiverr if anybody is interested in that. A link to Fiverr will also be in the description. And my services as a commission painter for tanks and vehicles will be available. Simply contact me via the business email associated with this account and we can discuss prices and such. I'm not going to put that email in the description because that's how you get spam. As always, I hope this video has been helpful or interesting for you. I would love to see any comments or questions you might have in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer. I would really appreciate it if you would share this video with everyone you think might find it useful or interesting. Also, subscribe to this channel to continue seeing my new videos. And if you're unaware of it, you could subscribe to my original channel. A link is in the description below. If you were already subscribed there, please stay subbed. I do hope to return to that channel. I may in future have separate channels for gaming and models. Anyway, I think that might be enough rambling from me. Thanks for watching. Farewell.